My name is Jennifer Hitchcock. I'm a professor of English at Reynolds and the Seidel Faculty Fellow for High Impact Practices. And welcome to this video presentation about tilting assignments to improve student learning. And TILT refers to transparency in learning and teaching. You can use the QR code on the left to access resources and slides, and feel free to pause the recording at any point. Some of the learning outcomes we will be addressing today, including identifying principles of transparency in learning and teaching, defining components of TILT, which include purpose, task, and criteria, sharing ideas for how to improve transparency in course assignments, develop strategies for gathering examples, apply TILT principles to one or more assignments, and discover further TILT resources. At Reynolds, many faculty, in particular full-time faculty, have been asked to tilt two assignments, and tilting, which means improving the transparency of assignments, has been shown to have a positive impact on student learning, student success, retention, etc. And studies show that tilting, starting with just two assignments in a course, can have a significant impact. So what is TILT? Again, just to review for those of you who might not be familiar. Transparency in learning and teaching, it's an evidence-based, high-impact practice. It can be applied to assignments across disciplines. More transparent assignments promote student success, sense of belonging, academic confidence. This also relates to the Reynolds flight path work to improve student success, along with early momentum and retention. And it pairs nicely also with growth mindset. In general, greater transparency has been shown to lead to improved learning and improved equity, or the closing of achievement gaps, as it benefits some students even more. So how do we tilt an assignment when we talk about tilting assignments? Again, there are three parts to tilt. Those are purpose, task, and criteria. And so we'll review what each of those means. For the purpose, you want to define those learning objectives. You want to define them clearly using clear language and terms that students recognize, so they will recognize how an assignment will benefit their learning. Now, you can pull some of those right from the course learning objectives, but you don't have to use, the VCCS language. It's okay to use language that's students are going to easily connect with. It's also good to explain as part of the purpose. Add at least a sentence or two explaining the real world relevance of these learning objectives beyond the classroom, how these knowledge and skills would be important in students' lives outside of this assignment, this course, or the institution. So anytime you can make those real world connections is a great idea. After defining the purpose, you want to clearly lay out the task, kind of step by step. What should students do first and next and last, and so on. You can define the actions that students should take using Bloom's taxonomy action verbs. Be sure to list any guidelines and recommended sequence for students' work, including anything they might need to do to prepare for the assignment. It's also helpful to specify any mistakes or common errors to be avoided. If you notice that there's certain things about an assignment students tend to struggle with, you can just spell that out right there in a little section about common mistakes. Another thing to think about, if you're doing some sort of problem-based learning or some sort of activity where you have a reason why you want to withhold some of that information, that's okay, but you just want to explain up front that that's part of the intention. So you can protect students' confidence and sense of belonging with a purpose statement, such as the purpose of this assignment is for you to struggle and feel confused while you test your own approach. The idea is that if you're not clear about the assignment, and if you don't tell students that it's normal that they would struggle and feel confused, then some students might be more likely to get very frustrated and give up. So just tell them if that's part of your intention. And last but not least is the criteria. We want to define characteristics of the finished product. What should this finished assignment look like? We can't assume that all students are going to automatically know or have experience with that type of assignment, or that your explanations alone are going to help the students visualize what they should be doing. So it's helpful to provide multiple examples, both strong and weak examples, and including real world examples whenever possible. You can annotate those examples or provide some explanation and context. Even better is to have students analyze multiple examples of the assignment, including real world examples, before they begin on the assignment. That's going to really help them think about what it is they're supposed to be doing. You can get student permission for strong student examples. You could also create weak examples using, generative AI, which is often better because even if we take a student's name off, it's really would be unfortunate for a student, if we use theirs as the weak example. So you can also, and if you need to, if it's a new assignment, you can even create your own examples as needed, and then collect student examples and real world examples later. You want to, your criteria should make it clear what's the difference between excellent work and adequate work. And providing students with a rubric and or a checklist of characteristics of successful work to also help them see how you're going to grade that work is going to be really helpful for them, because then they can look at that rubric or checklist and compare their own work to it and have a sense of how their work might compare before they submit that work. Okay. Then there's good to have a reflective component for assignments after the fact. Once the work is completed, once you've graded it and given feedback, have students do some short, could be in class or a homework reflective assignment to help them think about what their strengths and weaknesses were, to help them adjust their learning strategies to improve future work. Now, this also promotes metacognition and a growth mindset, of course, as well. But you'll find these things, spelling out these things, are going to really help students succeed on your assignments, and also to relieve that anxiety that a lot of students feel when they're not sure what they're supposed to do. Thinking of it one way, between the purpose, task, and criteria, you really want to have, if not an explanation of every aspect of what you're expecting for the assignment, at least a brief mention, and sometimes you can hyperlink some of these things to external documents that can get into more detail if you don't want your assignment to get too long. But it should include some aspect of purpose, task, and criteria. Now, there are some examples that I can show. This is just a screenshot from the Tilt Higher Ed website, where you can access a ton of useful example assignments from different subject areas. This is a transparent assignment design template that kind of explains what should go in each of these categories. There's also a Tilt checklist that you can access here as well. And I can show you some of the material available as well. As I mentioned, I would encourage you all to visit the Tilt Higher Ed website. If you can remember, it is www.tilthighered.com, or you can just Google Tilt Higher Ed, and it usually comes right up there. But this is a site that has a lot of useful stuff. Let's see here. We've got especially these Tilt examples and resources. This link here is going to be really helpful for instructors. And let me show you some of the things we have available here. There's even videos if you want some additional explanation about Tilt. And then you can see down here, if you open this, there are example assignments from different subject areas. So you might find some of these are going to be really useful depending on what you teach. You can probably find a class that's in a similar discipline. So let's see here. We can even have some math ones. And what the example assignments do is they include a less transparent assignment that might be missing part of the purpose, task, and criteria. And then below, a revised assignment that's more transparent that does include all three of those elements. And that's just one of the things you can find on this page. There's also tools for teachers at the bottom, and that's where you can find some really useful stuff, including that template for transparent design that I showed. The checklist is also a useful one. There's a lot of really useful stuff here, but I'll show you the checklist also. And this is something you can use to kind of ask yourself. Let's see. Well, here's that template. I think I already showed you the template that's it kind of defines what you should do for each of these sections. Now, you don't have to use this layout or format exactly as it is. The main thing is that you include something about all these sections and content, but you can kind of adapt it and make it your own. But this is helpful because it explains what you should do for each section. And here's the checklist. So this is, the kind of thing that's really helpful for you to make for students using the skills that you're looking for, the learning objectives you're looking for in an assignment. You can make your own checklist. You can even add how many points things are worth or make it into a rubric. But this is for instructors to test whether they are using tilt principles, and it asks questions for each section. So not only can you use this to kind of check your own assignments for how transparent they are, but also to get an idea of how you can create a checklist for your students as well. So something to think about is, and I know a lot of folks have already started tilting assignments starting in fall, or maybe you're working on it this spring. And even if you haven't been asked to tilt assignments officially by your dean, there's a good chance coming in fall 2025, more instructors, and at some point, including part-time adjunct instructors, will be asked to tilt 2 or more assignments. And most instructors who have done this, and I've met with a lot of folks working on this, have already been seeing positive impacts, including improved student grades, improved completion rates, and other things like improved student questions and fewer grade complaints. So fewer questions and grade complaints when you spell out what students are supposed to do. So even though it might take, some extra time the first time you revise your assignments to tilt them, a lot of instructors are finding that it saves them time in the long run because they're not responding to quite as many student questions, and they've seen significant positive impacts. There have also been some instructors find it challenging to implement tilt, and it might be certain parts more than others, certain disciplines finding certain aspects challenging. For example, in math, giving worked out example problems has long been a standard part of math education. So giving examples isn't really, different for what math instructors typically do. But in some other subject areas, they might not have been used to providing examples for students. So that might be new for them. So think about it, and you can pause the recording anytime to just jot down some ideas. But how has it worked for you so far? What has worked well? And what have you or your students struggled with the most? I also encourage you, if you do have any questions, I'll keep coming back to this. Please reach out to me, Jennifer Hitchcock at jhitchcock@reynolds.edu. You can also go to the CETL webpage and the Reynolds website and reach out for a one-on-one consultation, or just email cetl@reynolds.edu with tilt-related questions, and they will forward it to me. So if you have struggled at all with implementing tilt strategies, I'd be happy to do a one-on-one meeting with you to talk more about it and give you some suggestions and feedback. So please don't hesitate to reach out. One aspect that some instructors have struggled with is the examples, as I mentioned, including real-world examples. Now, again, for certain disciplines, this is real easy to find real-world practical examples. In other cases, instructors might have to, collect student examples and remove the name for those strong examples, using generative AI to make weak examples, which can be helpful because then you can ask the AI to create an example that does a particular common error on the assignment. Or in some cases, of course, instructors are creating their own examples. Some folks have found really good benefit from making short videos that include an explanation about the examples, especially in certain disciplines. In general, making short video overviews for assignment instructions can be helpful too if you notice students often not reading all the written instructions. And then in the video, you can provide an overview and encourage students to be sure to read the full written instructions as well. So think about if you're not including examples for students, strong, weak, and real-world examples, think about what are some types of real-world examples that could demonstrate one or more characteristics of your assignments, and where could you find these? You can always lean on colleagues in your discipline if you're not sure, or if your new faculty member reaching out to your department chair, for example, might help you come up with ideas. And again, real world examples don't have to match every part of your assignment exactly. Maybe there's a real world example that just demonstrates one part of the assignment really well. You can just explain that in your annotations or explanation that you provide with those examples. Again, having students maybe analyze some of these different types of examples in class, but the more strong examples and real world examples you give, it also means the students are less likely and less tempted to kind of copy just one strong example. Though it's better to give one strong example as opposed to no examples. If you want to take some time, again, to jot down some ideas about your thoughts and reflections about what assignments you might want to focus on to further tilt them to emphasize purpose, task, criteria, or how you might like to revise an assignment you've already tilted. These are some questions that can help you. So feel free to pause the recording here. You can also meet with, colleagues if you want to get together. I've had some colleagues in certain disciplines that have found it really helpful to even come up with, if you have a common assignment you use, or maybe you want to develop one that you can then tilt instead of everyone doing it themselves, that's another option. Also, if you have like a weekly repeating assignment, such as weekly discussion boards, or I know in nursing they do kind of a clinical report every week. Sometimes it can be helpful to tilt an overall instructions for that type of assignment. And then you can make a course link in Canvas with a briefer explanation to direct students back to that link to that overview page. So you don't have to repeat all parts of the instructions for every repeated weekly assignment, if that makes sense. And again, feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I have some resources at the end here. And again, you can use this QR code to access additional slides, resources, research, as well as in the Faculty Hub in Module 3, Teaching Excellence. You'll find some more material there. And of course, in addition to accessing the resources here using the QR code, please reach out to me with any questions, jhitchcock@reynolds.edu. And again, you can also email CETL, CETL at reynolds.edu if you have tilt questions, and they will forward it to me. You can also take a brief survey using this QR code as well to give your feedback. Thank you so much, and take care.